Hey everybody, Greg here, and this is a quick video about choosing between 120 frames per second in an HD, traditional HD 1920 by 1080 format, or going to a 720p 1280 by 720 resolution with 240 frames a second. And with the iPhone 7 Plus, this is an option, and I'm sure with future phones there will be choices to make with regard to how many frames per second and what resolution. So, and it should be noted that the iPhone can record at 30 frames per second in 4K video. So I want to show you how to change the settings for the iPhone camera. Here I've gone into settings, and I'm going to scroll down until I see Photos and Camera, and I'm going to tap on that. Then I'll, on that page, scroll down a bit, and you'll notice here toward the bottom, once we scroll all the way to the bottom, we can see the record video mode and then the record slow-mo mode. And under record video, the options are various frame rates and various resolutions. So at a minimum, you'd probably want to use the 1080p HD at 60 frames a second. That would be really crisp, smooth video without any sort of ghosting or, artifacts of trying to catch up with high speed, movement. But you could also look at the 4K video at 30 frames per second if you are video recording something that's not moving a lot, not a sporting event, or you're not on your bicycle moving or whatever. If it's relatively stable objects, then you'd get some great 4K video, and 30 frames per second is fine. So either of those two modes would be great, and you'll notice that on this screen it indicates how much storage space is going to be used up by that. So you are giving up some storage space. You want to have a phone that has a lot of storage capacity. So it's something you wouldn't have thought about before, but if you're going to be doing video recording with the iPhone, you'll want one with 128 gigabytes or more to go ahead and accommodate the size of those videos that you'll be recording. So that's standard video recording. And let's go back to the previous screen. The next one down, record slow-mo. Let's tap on that. And you'll see that we only have two resolutions to choose from, 1080p or 720p. Now this is important because the default setting is 720p high definition at 240 frames per second. So that's very good for really high speed action. The demo that you're going to see here shows a lawn sprinkler, water from a lawn sprinkler hitting a tree. And in that 200 frame per second mode, you can kind of notice a little more detail. It's actually going a little bit slower in the slow-mo mode. But for most high-speed action, 120 frames per second should be fine. It used to be considered that 60 frames a second was amazing. It's twice the speed of normal of what you normally have. So 120 is really quite good, and that's at 1080p. So what you'll find is if you do go to this 240 frame per second in 720p, when you go to edit, like in iMovie, for example, it's going to step down the resolution to the lowest common denominator. So when you go to export your project as a video file, you won't see 1080p as an option because it knows, hey, we can't be doubling, increasing the size of this video. It's going to start looking fuzzy, right? So that's why you want as much as possible to be in that higher resolution mode for exporting later. Now you could use another product. You could frame in that 720p image in a smaller size, or picture-in-picture or something like that, to kind of trick iMovie into thinking, oh, okay, this is fine. We can still export at the 1080p resolution. But anyway, those settings should be fine for most of what you're doing, keeping it at 1080p, using the 60 frame a second for normal video and 120 frame per second for the slow-mo. So anyway, I'm going to cut back to the video and continue this demo there. But anyway, I just did a test, which I'm going to show you, comparing 120 frames per second and 240 frames per second while video recording a lawn sprinkler as the water hits a tree and splashes off the tree. with anything that's at a really high speed, you're going to want that higher frame rate. And if it's something that's not quite as demanding, not quite as high speed, then you can probably get by with the lower frame rate of 120 frames per second, or maybe even 60 frames per second, which is a good jump up from 30. And in fact, if you're shooting in traditional HD, you might want to go ahead on the iPhone 7 Plus. You can choose between 30 frames per second and 60 frames per second. The 60 is going to look a lot sharper, a lot more fluid. And the only drawback to that is that your videos will take up a little more room on your phone for storage, but that's about it. So that's a good choice. And certainly if you're doing some relatively slow motion video, what I mean to say is a video with not much motion in it, a video with things that are either stationary or moving slowly, you might as well step it up to 4K video, get some really crisp images, and do that at the regular, 30 frame a second. So anyway, that's the rundown on frames per second, and hope that video has been helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, suggestions. Those are always appreciated. Have a great day.